Alicia, now I understand the Greens leader Bob Brown has just begun a press conference in Canberra at Parliament House. We might have a listen into that now.
Which must hang on everybody's lips is, well, what's wrong with the report? And if the report's not wrong, then why well south of that? Christine will talk in a moment about complementary or other measures that will be required. But I see that Tony Abbott is out there trying to terrorise the country about the inevitability of protecting Australia and the world from dangerous climate change. He can't have it all ways. He has a target of reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 5% by 2020. That will be costing $30 billion. And he's not going to get it from the polluters. He's going to get it from the ordinary taxpayers. Tony Abbott's been in Geelong today. His plan would shut wards at the hospital. It would close down transport access to the city. It would put teachers, police and nurses out of work. Many other people in public services. He is a double dealer and a snake oil salesman who the public should be very much concerned about. We ask Mr Abbott to explain on his polluters don't pay, taxpayers pay methodology for reaching a 5% target, how he's going to do it, and we will continue to take him on. It's highly irresponsible, and the media should be taking him on as well to ask him to explain how he is going to fund a 5% reduction by 2020 while paying the polluters with public money rather than have them pay, as we propose, polluters pay and households get compensated. He says households pay through taxes and the polluters get compensated. Now it's time the heat was put on him to have him explain how he's going to do that. I'll ask Christine to talk about this matter of the potential $40. It's not the only means of dealing with climate change that we reasonably need to take on, and she's got a few more comments on it, haven't you, Christine?
It's all under wet cement. A lot of questions today about what should the starting price be, and that is still a matter of debate in the Climate Committee, so we haven't reached an agreement on that. Clearly, the starting price, the level of the escalator, depends on where we think the international price will be at a point at which you might change to a flexible pricing mechanism, and also the effective carbon price depends on what you're doing with your fossil fuel subsidies and what other additional measures you might have to support the transition to renewables and other forms of energy. So there are a lot of matters to be taken into account. It's not a simple, this is the price and that's the only thing that we need to be taking into consideration. I think what we could say is that the committee is now reaching a fairly detailed level of understanding of all of the elements that would need to be looked at in order to come up with the scheme as it will finally be presented, and I'm looking forward to engaging in that debate in the next month or so. One of the things you will see coming out of today's meeting when the papers go up this afternoon is that there is a paper by Frank Giozzo from the ANU on floor prices, and there is also a paper from the department which canvasses a different view. The issue of floor price is something that's an interesting one, and it's looking at when you make the switch from a fixed price to a flexible pricing mechanism, how do you make sure that you don't have volatility so that you can give some certainty to investors of when they begin to engage with the scheme that they're not going to see a major difference in the price at that time. Frank Giozzo's position is you can have a transitional floor price through that period, which you may review at a later time to make sure you give that sort of certainty. If you're not going to do it by way of the introduction of the floor price, as has occurred in the UK, then you might want to consider other measures, as the Department have suggested, by looking at the quality of the permits that you might allow with international linking, the extent of those permits and so on. So it's an interesting debate, a lot of active discussion, and unlike the CPRS where there was no engagement of the Parliament around options, this time we are having a good debate about what is best for Australia in the transition to a low carbon economy, and everybody is on track to make sure that we deliver in the time frame that we've set down, and that is to get this agreed as quickly as possible, get it legislated in the second half of this year, get it operational by the 1st of July next year.
How far apart are you? Senator, how far apart are you on you, the Greens, and the government on a final price?
Oh, well, the committee's still working on that. If you want to ask if it's inches or feet, I can't give you a good answer to that, but everybody's maturely working on the issue, as are the independents, and a lot more work to be done. But we're looking at just a moment, won't be a sec. We're looking at a timetable the Prime Minister's laid down, and we hope to keep it.
Senator Brown, do you believe $40 would be a good starting point, or that it would work in somewhere?
I'm very keen to see the report that Minister Ferguson's sitting on, which has leaked out, I think, from the big end of town. And I'm very interested here that the big end of town's got information that we on the committee don't have, if you don't mind. Minister Ferguson, please explain. When I've seen the report, I can answer the question about the merit of it, but you know, it's going to be a handy input to that very important task.
What's your opinion on the figure, though?
One point I'd like to make is that the Deutsche Bank visiting Australia recently made the point that they expect that the European price, which is effectively the international price, will be, on average, between 2013 and 2020, about €32. So you're looking at a little bit more than $40. They're suggesting will be the average during that period. And so when you look at the Deloitte report, which, as Senator Brown said, we haven't seen, but we've read reports of saying that the price would need to get to $40 in a reasonable time frame, and I don't know if they specify that. That is not inconsistent with what the European Union are saying that the average price between 2013 and 2020 would be. So again, it comes down to what's the starting price, what is the escalator, what are we going to do about complementary measures so that we get to an effective carbon price.
Senator, what do you say of the notion of just getting a foot in the door with a starting price? The government clearly is wanting to get a starting price much closer to 20, if not 20 itself. The idea there is that you get the foot in the door and then you ramp it up later. What's wrong with that approach if politics is the art of the possible?
Okay, well, the issue here is you want to give certainty to investors over a long period of time. If you are expecting to want to go from a fixed price to a flexible price in a reasonably short period, say 3 to 5 years, the point at which you go to the flexible price, you have to intersect with the international price, and you don't want dislocation. So if your international price is going to be somewhere in the vicinity, as I said, of €32 average between 2013 and 2020, then you don't want a big disconnect between where you are on the Australian price at that point of conversion and where the international price is.
But you're going to eventually have to make this decision as to whether you have a carbon price or not. And there might be the case where it would be so politically poisonous for the government to have a starting price higher than $30, $40, and it would want something that is has minimal impact.
Let me just tell you, Andrew, we're not in the business of political poison. We're in the business of being highly responsible with this nation's future. That's the difference between us and Mr Abbott.
You might, but the option might, the alternative, Senator.
Well, let's not deal with that hypothetical. Let's work towards it in a mature and sensible way.
Things hypothetical. I mean, is $40 enough to get, you know, the big power stations from coal to gas?
Well, this paper's just about that.
Yeah, but I'm asking for your opinion.
Well, I'm saying give us the information and we'll look at it, and we're working on such matters.
You've already arrived at what you believe is the appropriate price.
No.
I mean, you've been meeting for
we're taking the inputs. Christine's spoken about that. There's a lot of variables to be looked at.
What's taking so long?
If I can answer
Well, let me just answer the gentleman by saying this. We have a committee which has got an outcome coming by about 1st of July.
So do you
suggest to us, are you saying to me...
What I suggest.
Yes, it is. You're asking a question, I'm asking one back. Are you suggesting to me that committee process should be stopped halfway through without information like this
I'm
report
suggesting that you would have
feeding
a
into
fair
it.
idea of what price you want, and it's probably a lot higher than 40.
I'm a little more open-minded than you are.
It's critical, but
can say today that the price is going to be well below 40. Where do you think the price should be well below or well above?
Well, as I said, Mr. Combe should explain why he says it should be well below 40. I mean, if there's a rationale behind that, let's hear it.
So you don't have an opinion on the issue, then? You don't have a price that you'd like to see it start
I want to
at?
see the report, and I'll be able to inform you when I do.
What about yesterday? Did you have an opinion yesterday before this report was allegedly leaked?
Our opinion's well known that we are in the business of negotiating with the government and the independents to get the best result for Australia.
Would you accept a carbon starting price well south of $40 if there were significant complementary measures or other programs connected to
Like
this
what?
well, that's
Fossil fuel subsidies, maybe?
Okay.
renewable energy programs?
Put them on the
or
table and we'll give you a
Renewable
readout.
energy programs, low price.
So the point that we want to make here, and it comes to your question and to yours too, Tom, about how do you bring on the transformation in the economy? It is more than just the starting price and the escalator. It also has to be the additional measures, because we know that even at, if you were to take the Deloitte report, it's saying $40 isn't even high enough to drive the transition to gas, let alone the transition, say, to solar thermal, which we'd like to get to, large-scale renewables. So you're going to have the price plus additional measures. Now, the renewable energy target is important, but itself is not enough to bring on those additional programs and additional things like solar thermal plants. That's why the Greens have talked about a national gross feed-in tariff. That's why we've talked about loan guarantees. So when you talk about how to get conversion in the economy, you're not only talking about the starting price, you're talking about the escalator of how quickly that starting price increases, plus, and that's why I've said it's the price plus, it is the additional and complementary measures like something like loan guarantees and a feed-in tariff, like getting rid of some of the fossil fuel subsidies, and then you get an effectively higher carbon price.
Isn't the starting price, though, what in your opinion, Senator Milne, is what is needed to transition in terms of the starting price on carbon?
Well, I can tell you that to bring on a solar thermal plant, you would need a carbon price in excess of $120, and that is not going to happen. That's why I'm saying it is the combination of these measures that is the important thing, so that we get transformation in the economy. We put in a price signal saying we are going in this direction, and there will always be a price signal on carbon, but it will be complemented, if you like, by other measures which will bring on transformation in the economy in the time frame we need
Senator,
to save the
can
climate.
you add up for us then what the cost of the complementary measures is as well? So it's all taxpayers' money, and that's money that is so far unfunded in the budget. So can you tell us what it will cost the Australian taxpayer, carbon price plus your complementary measures?
But Chris, when you say it's all taxpayers' money, do you really, is that your assessment?
Well, can I hear from the Senator about where the money is going to come from, Senator? So where will the money come from, Senator Milne?
You need to get the parameters of the question
Senator
correct,
Milne,
because they're faulty.
No, you can ask the questions really on this side, Senator. Where will the money come from, Senator Milne?
Well, the Treasury identified 17 subsidies that the fossil fuel sector already gets, which is taxpayers' money. They are complementary measures to the fossil fuel sector. When we identify exactly the volume of taxpayers' money that goes into those subsidies, then you could be budget neutral.
Senator, this is one of the last meetings of the MPCCC today. Lenore's report today was correct. Before we sit down, you guys sit down and hammer out a final price. Now, Tony Windsor missed the meeting. Is that a concern? Why did he miss it? Are you guys on a different page?
First up, you're wrong again.
Well, he was there.
He was at the meeting.
Just on the gas
Can somebody give us a question?
With tenor of the discussions in this committee?
They're very good. It was very good tenor.
Senator, it sounds like there's the complementary measures will be fairly important then in deciding what the starting price might be. Can you give us a sense how close the committee is to agreement on the complementary measures, or is that still, given there's not long to go in this process, is that still an area where you have a lot of work to do?
I think there's a lot of work to do on all of this to put together a package, but what there is quite a good understanding of is the elements that will need to go into a package, and so issues like additional measures are certainly on the table.
Did you challenge the climate change minister at today's meeting about his comments that $40 would be well below $40?
We weren't challenging people. We had a...
Well, you asked him to explain why he
as you know, it's a cabinet subcommittee, and the contents of that subcommittee meeting in Canberra. But we had a good discussion about all things and came away feeling that the committee's moving forward.
Senator Milne, just on the gas question though, some people within the gas industry seem to be trying to push this idea that if the price isn't at a certain level, that not only will it have little effect, but that also it could have fallouts in terms of the national electricity market and so on. What's your view of that idea that's being pushed in terms of what some of the flow-on effects could be in terms of the national electricity market?
Well, we're very keen to see reform of the national electricity market, particularly to stop the bias towards new supply and to enable more demand-side management. And so that's hopefully one of the long-term reforms that's been needed for a long time that might well come out of this process that we will be discussing. But interestingly with the gas sector, on the one hand they're asking for compensation because they're going to be so badly done by. The next minute they want a high price to enable them. The fact of the matter is that in the transition to a low-carbon economy, gas is going to do extremely well, but gas is a transitional fuel on the way to renewables. So gas is going to have its day, but it is not going to be ad infinitum. There will be the transition from gas just as there is now from coal.
And just to clarify, if there are adequate complementary measures through subsidies and various other means, you would be happy with a starting price at $26?
We haven't put on the table a particular price. What we are looking at is the price, the escalator, the additional measures and the intersect with the international price, because the investors are all saying to us what they simply cannot risk is complete dislocation from where the price is at the point that it transitions to the international price. And so that really is the parameter that people need to be talking about, hence the idea of the floor price as a maybe transitional thing to give people some security that there won't be major dislocation. So they're all matters which change.
A fair bit of friction there in that press conference. Greens leader Bob Brown along with Greens Senator Christine Milne there live from Parliament House in Canberra discussing the carbon tax, which we've heard so much about, making particular mention of a report that's going to be released tomorrow suggesting the carbon price needs to be $40 a tonne to make it worthwhile to build a new gas-fired power station to replace a coal-fired power station. To put this all in context, political editor Lyndall Curtis joins me now from Canberra. Lyndall, first of all,